You're listening to the Diginauts on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Coming up this week on the Diginauts.
Will humanity evolve more in the next 30 years than it has in the past thousands of years?
Are your political beliefs hardwired into your animal brain?
Are you okay with Amazon replacing truck drivers with autonomous vehicles?
All this and more this week on the Diginauts. Society,
The future,
morality,
disruption,
policy,
humanity,
innovation,
technology.
Why? Not that I intend to murder somebody and not have it tracked.
You already did.
Shh. You said you'd never tell.
Diginauts.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Hey, Eric. How's it going?
It's great.
I am Darren. This is Eric. We are the Diginauts. We're back with a new show. It's 2017.
Day 3.
Day 3 of 2017. We're still alive. We have a little over 2 weeks before the Trump administration. Trump administration is a word that the news is going to use with us on a regular basis from here on out. So our top of mind subject today is in the politics world.
I mean, you think about fake news, people claiming that is the problem.
Isn't it delightful how the Republican Party has taken fake news and turned it into something that they're the victim of, despite the evidence to the contrary? I mean, by all means, there has definitely, our friends in Macedonia and Russia who were exploiting the whole, economics of the internet. They were happily playing both sides on that, but the whole, as we've discussed in previous shows, when you ultimately go and take the things not based on fact away, it was a little one-sided. Anyway.
Yeah, indeed. And came across a recent article on Vox.com where they basically started looking into why it's so hard to change someone's political beliefs compared to non-political beliefs.
So basically what we all experienced over the holidays.
Exactly.
Going home and talking to our families.
Exactly. And, it didn't come down to someone's intelligence. It didn't come down to, a variety of things. But it really came down to the following. Like, people view their politics almost as part of themselves, their identity. And furthermore, researchers believe that the brain, with those beliefs, tries to protect itself. So it's above and beyond just an opinion. It really acts as a true part of them, and that's why it's so hard to change compared to non-political beliefs.
So this was based on a study, and it's kind of like fundamental to the human animal?
Exactly. So Jonas Kaplan from University of Southern California basically said that the brain's primary responsibility is to take care of the body and to protect the body.
Okay.
So, thinking about politics and them being part of or perceived by the body, part of itself, the brain is going to try and protect itself and yourself. And that's really what makes it so hard to change someone's political beliefs compared to non-political beliefs.
So somewhere hardwired into my animal brain is the belief that, whatever my position on gun control, that's part of who I am as an entity. And if you threaten it, it's like threatening my internal organs?
In a way, he did a study, and it was published in Scientific Reports, where they took, 40 self-avowed liberals, of all people, who had deep convictions, and put them within an MRI scanner, and he started to challenge their beliefs. So they did things like having them they're watching their brains as they were showing them different...
Fox News.
Well, I'm not sure if it was Fox News, but things that challenged their inherent beliefs, and it really showed which parts of the brain had, the activations within the MRI and whatnot, and lo and behold, the ones attached to things like self-identity and negative emotions really started firing off when their beliefs were being challenged via that imagery.
Okay, so it's not just the same as like if I'm in a fight with somebody, I'm going to experience these kind of things. It's a full-on, like, no, my person is being threatened.
Exactly.
And those same parts of the brains are responding. So he's kind of drawing the conclusion that we identify that as a possession or an identity or self.
Yes. And to that point, like, he basically said that the psychological self is the brain's extension of that. When our self feels attacked, our brain is going to bring to bear the same defenses that it has for protecting the physical body.
Fight or flight.
In a way.
Basically. Interesting. So the interesting thing about that is, right, does that mean that when it comes to an election year that there just isn't, the so-called swing voter, right? Mm-hmm. If everybody fundamentally believes whatever they believe and you sort of just can't change minds, it kind of raises the question, what does it take to change a mind? You have to...
I mean, to me, it's like, if someone's changing their mind, they're not that convicted. Their conviction for that belief isn't that strong, and I think they don't perceive it as part of themselves.
Okay. So you would have some beliefs that are fundamental to who you are and your identity. I mean, that makes sense, right? But let's say we wanted to get somebody who was a staunch liberal, a staunch Republican, and get them to reconsider, right, some of their fundamental...
Therein lies the billion-dollar question.
I would assume that you would have to do a degree of...
hypnosis.
Well, I was going to say detangling of self versus the political issue or the facts or the opinions that go along with it, right? Like,
right.
You have to somehow give that person permission to think of themselves as someone who's okay with gay marriage, let's say, right? Like, and that doesn't threaten who you are.
Right.
You can think that without threat to self.
Yep.
So that's kind of an interesting thing if you try to apply it to the concept of a swing state, right? So sort of what does a politician need to do to win over the middle? Or what does a politician have to do? What does it take for something like the 1984 election when Reagan runs the map, right? What is he doing that is causing the whole nation to be willing to kind of like switch sides or switch point of view a little bit without feeling threatened? They're like, yeah, I'm cool with that.
Right.
Or that uncool with Walter Mondale, I guess, but that doesn't sound like this study is indicating that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely intriguing. I think many people are trying to figure out, like, your very point, like, how do you get people to switch,
right,
genuinely? And I think there's also applications to marketing for non-political things. Like, some people are so passionate about brands and products, right? I would wager that probably a similar study from a marketing and branding perspective might reveal that certain products and brands are, people consider them part of themselves and
absolutely
attacks on themselves if they're convinced to switch.
Right. That makes perfect sense. I mean, you and I have both worked in marketing and advertising in past lives and sort of now here and there. And so, like, you definitely, if you spend time in that world, the whole, like, there's a reason that cereal is marketed to kids, right? Not just here, eat this sugar, but like, get to know this brand name, 2-year-old, because, we want you to be an 82-year-old who still likes that same brand name, or toothpaste, or like
Fruit Loops.
Yeah. I mean, those are like kind of fundamental things that you go after somebody. If you're kind of a Procter and Gamble or a Unilever,
right,
it's not problematic for you to advertise to kids because that's an investment that turns into a life. You want that deep embedded feeling in somebody's head.
Right. And you think about, like, the number of CPG companies out there. There really aren't that many. They just have many brands underneath them. So
I wonder if that speaks to why we so often respond to, like, nostalgia advertising. If it kind of connects back to like, oh yeah, I do believe that, because that's been there all the time.
And I agree. And I actually have a book. I haven't read it fully. I forgot the name of it, which isn't very helpful. But it's basically about the fact that most traditions were started by marketers.
Right.
And
right.
like that's a marketer's dream, right?
Right.
Your service, product, and brand embedded in someone's tradition.
Yeah.
Like Amazon creating Amazon Day or Amazon Prime Day, and more recently Amazon Digital Day.
Right,
like,
right.
It's completely created out of nowhere, yet completely successful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of examples of that, like Coca-Cola co-opted Santa Claus, and the whole like giving a diamond is forever has to be perhaps the like single, forward copywriting that has had the most financial benefit for that company ever, right? Because that concept of like people didn't used to do that, and then they did, and now it's a tradition, and everyone does it, and everyone is required to drop, X. Oh, and then the like a handy guideline is 2 months' salary. How amazing is that you can just kind of like make that a thing,
right?
That you should probably give us an amount of money equal to what it takes you 2 months to make. Like you need a diamond is forever first in order to get that in place, and then something like 2 months' salary doesn't sound challenging to the part of your animal brain, right? That finds that okay. I'm sure there's a bunch of others that we're not thinking of. Tweet us. Let us know some of the ones that you think are traditions that marketers have slipped past you. Do you think that you have things that are so deeply embedded in you that you feel threatened to your very being when they're attacked? Is that why we have such a strong reaction during the presidential year that we just endured? Year and a half that we just endured. Let us know what you think.
Hey, thanks for listening. You know what? Who are you? We really want to know. So there's many ways in which we can find out, and many ways in which you can tell us. So one way, you can go to goodtalknetwork.com. I believe there's a contact form. Furthermore, we're on Twitter at Good Talk Network. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're even on YouTube. Leave a comment, reach out to us. We want to understand like why you're listening, who you are, what's your background, and furthermore, what you want to hear about. Thanks a lot.
So it's time for segment 2. This is the future file. I just started recording. Eric's looking up puzzled. I normally say, hey, you ready to go?
Shocker.
Didn't do it. Let's go. The future file today, we're going to talk. This is one of my favorite, most interesting future subjects there is the fundamentals of us as humans, and what happens when that, well, I'll let you bring us into it, but I have many things to say. I want my robot body.
This one's deep. We're gonna go deep down a spiral, even going back to evolution, right? So basically it was from an article on the Singularity Hub, and the theme of it is that humanity is experiencing such exponential growth that it will transform humanity itself within a window of 30 years.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like 30 years seems like a long period of time, but in reality it's not. Especially as we go into kind of the extent of change that they're writing about happening within those 30 years,
right? Compared
Compared to what's happened, over thousands of years, hundreds of years.
And you sort of apply the Moore's law, right? That everything gets whatever it is, half as fast and twice as fast and half as expensive and twice as much memory or whatever. And 2 is probably not the actual constant on the curve, but the underlying idea is that this isn't a line, this is an exponential curve, and we're riding the steep part right now. And you can think about little things like how fast smartphones came along. Right. So there's the fundamental, like, look, if you don't believe that 30 years from now we're going to be in a world so significantly different that it's unrecognizable, then all you have to do is look back 5 or 10 years and think about the things that are now fundamental to our lives that just didn't exist, right? Everybody Ubers. That's like 2 or 3 years old. Airbnb, you know, that like, and not just like products and services like that, but, you know, fundamental things in technology impacting lifestyle, right? Like going out to dinner with people and what would happen if you got in an argument, right? Like you'd have to go look it up someday or agree to disagree. No more, you know? So we've had some pretty fundamental changes. And that idea, like when was the first iPhone released? I don't know the exact year, but it's not 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, it's more in the world of something from 5 to 10. Maybe closer to 10. But anyway, the point of the story is that like stuff's moving fast.
Yeah, they're going as far as to say that within that 30-year time frame, it might give birth to a new species, basically reinventing humanity.
Right. So we should stop for a second and talk about the concept of singularity, because you mentioned that this came from singularity, and that idea is essentially the point in the future where computers and people some way or another merge, that we reach a point where either, you know, human brains can be mapped in a way that you can translate that over to machines, or machines are so grown up that they're equivalent or surpass human calculating capabilities. And so it's not like an exact year, obviously, right? But the fact of the matter is, when people toss around this idea of a singularity where whatever it looks like, that humans and computers kind of either fuse or coexist or
it's like a seamlessness.
Right. When it does make sense that you start to think of that as a different species, because on the sort of fundamental level, it's, I don't know, species is a hard, because the actual definition of species is, can you reproduce, right? Will these future human-computer hybrids be able to reproduce with non-hybrid computers or humans? Probably. Will they? I don't know. At least, maybe that's the right word. Not a new species, but a new hybrid, where, if nothing else,
Intel inside will
is
take
different.
a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
If it is Intel, maybe it's NVIDIA.
Who knows? Who knows? I don't think they know. Nobody knows. I mean, the fact is, it's probably some other company who's invented something else, and will, the same way that we're now looking back and saying, hey, man, can you believe that phones used to be something that existed in your house only? It's super possible that we will look at companies like NVIDIA and Intel and say, can you believe that they used to make silicon wafers and etch tiny little, you know, transistor-like devices into them,
and not use DNA and the CRISPR to edit the genome?
Yeah, and there's no laser lights in that. You haven't phased any particles. What's the matter with you? I don't know. We have no idea what it's going to take in order to get there. But if you read sort of the material science breakthroughs that are happening, some of which are just like, hey, neat, and others of which could be the basis of brand new industries and you know, ways of doing things that we've never heard of before. Man. So anyway, that's enough background and enough sidetracking on the concept that, hey, we could fuse. What were they proposing that this new species would look like? And
yeah, I mean, they stepped it out, so to speak, kind of in like 4 oversimplified phases, and made an analogy towards evolution, right? So the simplest form, or step 1, like simple humans today, we're analogous to...
Wait, we're still in step 1?
Well, I'm not saying where we are, right? I'm just saying that they made an analogy to evolution itself.
Gotcha.
And they basically said, you know, here's step 1 through 4.
Okay.
And there's certain comparables, right?
Gotcha.
So step 1 was really, you know, simple humans. Well, to your point, yes, I would say they are calling us simple today. Analogous to, I guess, what they called prokaryotes. Everyone's independent of one another. They're competing against one another and sometimes collaborating.
Okay.
Right? So pretty simple. Nothing there's not technology really. Well, it can facilitate that, but it's expanding above and beyond things like that, right?
So they're comparing the evolution of life. Prokaryotes are when a cell doesn't have a nucleus, so it's like the simplest single-celled organism. So they're saying that humanity today is pond slime that's attempting to like ooze itself to connect with other pond slime and become something bigger. Or I think the theory is that basically like one kind of organism ate another kind of organism, and then those two things became something else when they couldn't digest it.
So now you're touching upon step
phase 2. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Where the eukaryotes were created by ingesting technology, to your point. Like consuming things.
See, so we've talked about this on the show before. I don't want anything inside me. But you're saying that like they're following the evolution of humans up till today, and then they're comparing it to our evolution into these new hybrid robot people.
Right.
And the first thing we have to do is put stuff in us. Damn it, man!
Open up and open wide.
All right. So what happens in phase 2? We ingest technology. Was that their actual word?
Yes. So technology will be incorporated into our bodies and brains, driving efficiency and really the use of the respective information that's captured and sensed along with energy itself.
Right. Wow. And so we start to blur the lines between, batteries and mitochondria, practically, right? So that energy that's coming from the sun.
It's like, I'm feeling tired. Where's my Tesla backpack?
Well, not a backpack, right? You've
butt cheek.
Exactly. You've merged your new synthetic photosynthesis cells into your skin or
Baby
whatever.
Got backpack or battery pack.
I see what you did there. Okay, so implants, transplants, injections, who knows?
Exactly.
But we take on our nucleus.
Not just Botox.
I'm scared of phase 3 now. But bring us to it.
Brace yourself. And we've already been exposed to some of this.
Right.
I mean, I think some of their phasing is a little, I don't know. I think the earlier phases give us a little too little credit. Latter phases, I don't know. But you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
So phase 3 is really incorporating AI, where we become increasingly connected with each other, and millions, billions of other AI systems out there, computers, cloud-based things, and they say this is analogous to the first multicellular life forms, roughly 1.5 billion years ago, and that this mass interconnection and interaction will basically provide a new, like, almost worldwide consciousness,
right?
Given all the connections,
or at least I would hope the ability to do it. Like I don't want everybody reading my thoughts, as we've discussed previously. But we've also talked about the whole like concept of a universal translator, right? If you can think to the technology, and the technology can transmit to another to another technology, and that technology can communicate to somebody's thoughts, right? Then you essentially have cross-language telepathy. If you back that up by giving everybody their own personal Google, as Google's CEO likes to propose, or we've everybody's got their own Watson to help them process what they experience. Watson is IBM's prototype of like big data exploration with a lot of uses. So we become an interconnected race of organisms because of this technology that's merged into us.
Right, and then this step 4, phase 4 is becoming multiplanetary. Whereas now, if you consider humans solely like predominantly earthbound, from a living perspective, day in, day out.
Okay. And so we went from multicellular to multi-planet did the analogy just fall apart? I'm not sure what they're...
Now, so their analogy in step 4 was basically that the journey to like planets and moons and asteroids and even beyond is analogous to, they reference the lungfish climbing out of the oceans 400 million years ago.
Okay. So, not a perfect analogy, in my opinion, in one man's opinion. And as you're saying, it's not exactly perft in terms of like giving us credit for how
like
far
we
we've
have
come in the
AI
last century
now.
or whatever, right?
It's not as uber connected.
So the lines are kind of blurred, but there is something to it that like
they're trying to put a framework around
right.
what's going on and what they think will happen within the next 30 years.
Right. See, now the most interesting part to me is this sort of what the singularity means, the part where we're ingesting technology into ourselves and the part where we're leaning on AI to amp that up. And it reminds me of a thing when I was a little kid. We were getting in the car one day, and my dad, who is, your standard baby boomer dad who kind of grunts and eats his potatoes, and then every once in a while expresses one of the deepest thoughts ever. And you're like, what, Dad? And listens to his oldies music in the car and all that kind of stuff. He was like, you kids ever think that maybe your generation might never die? Which has, I think it was a random ass thought that he would never remember in a million years, right? But it has stuck with me forever. Like, maybe. And I don't know if I do believe that, like, that's us, but our kids, right? They got another, 100 years in front of them by the time that you factor in the increased life expectancy and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, if you go back 100 years for us to 1916, we're talking about flying automated cars and everything. And 1916, you're driving around, Model Ts?
Yeah.
And phones are like phones with operators who move wires from place to place when you call the main operator switch, like are a decade or two old. We've had lights for a few decades, and plenty of places don't have them. But we don't have toilet paper, right? We don't have, necessarily, indoor plumbing. Like a lot of things, 100 years is a long time. And if you think about it in the sort of compound interest that our technology is experiencing, then it's a hell of a long time.
Yep.
So that idea of like, maybe we never die, there's something to that, right? Because scientists are predicting that we'll be in the world of mapping a human brain neuron for neuron into a computer hard drive in 20, 30 years, right? So somewhere in the 2040s, they think we'll be able to just back up people, right? And who knows what that means?
Right.
I don't want to go first, right? I don't want to be the first one to leap into a robot body, but if they can, and the fun part of this is that suddenly all of that weird things that we call human, we have to figure out the technology behind it, the sort of quote unquote soul, or at least, if not soul, whatever that means to you, at least emotions, right? Because do I want a robot body if it means that I don't find things funny anymore? Not really. I'll live out my old folks' years chuckling at things and throwing bricks at TV. Who knows? Will be president by then. Probably
maybe a robot,
Romy or whatever. So yeah, exactly. Like, it's fascinating to think that that's where we're conceivably headed, or at least somebody's going to try, right? Like in our modern world, we've if you think about through the episodes that we've covered in this show, some of the stuff that's happening right now, the like human head transplants and whatnot, like there are fringe mad scientists who are gonna fuck shit up if they can help it, right? And like someday somebody's gonna try and transfer their consciousness into a machine. Inevitable. And I think it's fairly likely that we'll be alive when it happens. Now, whether that becomes the next multinational company to invest in is another question.
Right.
But you got to believe that there's a quadrillion-dollar industry in keeping people from dying.
Yep.
Now, what would that mean all of a sudden? Like, if you can back up an entire person's consciousness to a machine, now what's to stop you from, like, well, what happens when that machine gets burnt up in a fire, right? Is that person dead now? Or do they have...
They're in the iCloud.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly where I'm going. Do they have backups?
So wait, what's Apple's email?
Oh, I don't know. Like,
I think it's something.me.
Prescient, perhaps? Yeah, I mean, if anybody's going to be one of the companies, they're doing it, right?
Right.
Like you're going to go get your iBody. Maybe that's why they put the I on it to begin with, just because they knew that eventually it would just merge with your person. Wow. So, was there any like big conclusion to the sort of like how they think we're going to transform, or was it just kind of calling out, yeah, the future is so cloudy and we're definitely going to transform. We're going to be a new species. They even, they made such a bold statement. Did they have any kind of idea for what it's going to look like?
I mean, I think there's some main themes that they identified. So one, increasingly people are wired. So today there's roughly 2.9 billion people connected online. Further out, like 6 to 8 years from now, they expect that to be 8 billion globally.
Right.
So increasingly wired, hence the connections and whatnot, right? Furthermore, like brain and computer interfaces. So those two will not be separate. Those will become even more connected and seamless.
And I would think if you kind of extrapolate out, as we also have the Internet of Things growing exponentially, that, it's not just when your refrigerator is out of eggs, your refrigerator automatically orders eggs, right? You could think, I kind of want eggs tonight, and the Amazon drones will put some eggs in your refrigerator, right? And probably cook them for you.
Yep.
Right? I mean, isn't that where we're headed?
Alexa,
Or will we
where are my eggs?
Or will we even need food?
And then the third theme, the kind of convergence of artificial intelligence and human intelligence. And then the last one, opening kind of the space frontier.
Right.
Elon Musk wanting to, put civilization on Mars, etc.
Yeah, which I kind of feel like is, yeah, okay, we're going there, but that to me feels like an application of some of the other stuff. Like, I can imagine, like, when we talk about space travel, well, the humans and computers are merged so much that this guy is sitting in a room and experiencing the space travel as if that robot were himself, and, right, like, that way there's a quote-unquote human-guided spaceship that's traveling, and yet you're not putting that, radiation-prone human into... I don't know where I'm going with this, but, like, every time we talk about going into the stars, I always think that there are so many things that we haven't figured out yet, and it seems to me like humans and computers merging is sooner than that, and maybe that's their point. Maybe they're kind of thinking, as I was just starting to, that, well, you almost need that merger first in order to pull off some of that other stuff. Who knows?
Yep.
I guess if we're all wired into the Matrix, then it won't matter. I don't know where we're going. It is both exciting and freaky as hell as far as I'm concerned. There's that word again. So, yeah, tweet us. Let us know your opinion on where you think we're going. Do you welcome the merger of humanity and computer into a new perhaps hybrid species. Do you think that the stuff that it's going to get us is enough to our benefit to outweigh the creep factor, I'm going to call it? Or is it just one of those things where, like, my 2-year-old is now the leading iOS expert in our household? Is he just going to look at all of this as like, yeah, of course, hook me up? Let us know what you think. Hey, did you know that this podcast is part of goodtalknetwork.com? If you go to that website, you can have your choice of ways that you can follow us. I don't know, maybe you're a Twitter person. Well, we're on there, twitter.com/goodtalknetwork. Anytime you want to comment to us, you can just hit us up directly by tweeting to @goodtalknetwork. Or, of course, you can talk to me or Eric individually. We'd love to hear from you. Time for segment 3. This is a jurisprudent. We have an interesting legal case. Jurisprudent is our segment where we explore the world of technology as it applies to policy. And almost always, policy is way behind where technology is. And this is just such a case. There's a headline on Engadget. They reported police seek Amazon Echo data in a murder case.
Yeah, so police basically knocked on Amazon's door and said, hey, we want to basically get all of the audio that Alexa recorded for this one individual.
Yeah, it's a case out of Arkansas. It was a murder suspect. So, I mean, they're not just, knocking on the door trying to listen to people.
Right.
They have a specific situation. But it calls into question the idea of, do you have a right to privacy in your home, and should police be able to get access to the kind of like, the recorded information that happened inside your house? And I guess I don't have one of these devices, and in all honesty, this is kind of why. Not that I intend to murder somebody and not have it tracked.
You already did.
Shh. You said you'd never tell. I'm editing that out. No, wait, if I edit it out, then people will say, now I don't know what to do.
It's already been on a microphone.
Oh my goodness. No, but so like the idea that like it's always listening. And I guess the technology...
I mean, it is to some extent, right? Like it's always, unless you say Alexa, right? It doesn't effectively wake up.
Right. But it's listening for you to say Alexa.
Exactly.
And if you say...
hamburger.
Well, maybe not hamburger, right? But if you say, that's
murder.
Sexy, right? Or something like that that's kind of close. I mean, we all know that voice technology is not perfect.
Right.
If you ever try to text by voice.
But it's damn good.
It's a lot of times it's amazing. But it gets a word wrong every couple sentences, it seems like, depending on background noise and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess it's not uncommon for Alexa or her brethren to wake up for words that aren't necessarily they choose the word Alexa on purpose because you're not going to often say things like...
And if you have a friend or like a sibling or whatever whose name is Alexa, you can change it.
Okay.
You can change the keyword to Amazon.
Okay, but again, that's a word that you don't commonly... there's a reason it's not just Google, it's OK Google. Right? Like that's a combination wake-up word or wake-up phrase that's not going to come out of you accidentally very often, right? And so they chose Alexa, they chose Siri.
Right.
I mean, I know some of them are sci-fi references or whatever. But
yeah. What's not clear, though, you say Alexa, right? And then it starts listening. Then it's like, how long does it really listen to you for? Right. I mean, they said that the blue light around the ring lights up once shortly after saying Alexa, and then it gives you another visual cue as to where that Alexa voice came from, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm diagonal from it, it's going to point diagonally to me to basically acknowledge me.
Okay.
But eventually that light goes off. I assume that coincides with the lack of listening.
Right. One hopes.
Well, but if you accidentally say it it's going to be listening. And, if this guy had said some incriminating things...
So if you're ever being stabbed in the heart, start shouting Alexa in hopes that if nothing else, you'll take the guy down.
Or it might start playing heart music.
And that's us making light of a murder. But yeah, so like, so first of all, I guess it's always listening to you. It's recording when the light is on. That then goes up to the cloud, and I think we can assume gets parsed by Amazon to start to understand you as a person, so they can get a nice cradle-to-grave picture of your tastes and interests, and increase the percentage that the ads that they serve to you are going to convert.
And like if it hears different voices with different patterns, it can assume number of people in a household.
Right. They can take a pretty innocuous thing and turn it into a lot of stuff. But yeah, so then this kind of goes into that same world as the San Bernardino iPhone case, where the FBI said, hey, we went into this iPhone, and Apple said, nope, that doesn't serve our customers.
But a key difference, though, right? Like, they couldn't get in on their own. Well, eventually they did via, like, an Israeli hacking firm. But, like, Alexa, right? Like, if they got my credentials, or whoever's credentials are tied to that Alexa, right? That's far easier to get than having to use a fingerprint.
Well, they still have to compel a corporation legally to... I guess the difference is with the iPhone, they didn't want to create the back door that would allow it to happen, whereas with Amazon, there's no back door. It's a door with a lock.
Exactly.
Okay. So, but it is the fundamental question here is whether government has the right to force corporation to give individuals key to government in the case of suspicious cases.
But like, here's a counter argument, right? Like, what if they ask the same access to his email?
Right.
Is that any different?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I guess, what's interesting about this one is that it's specifically attempting to get a record of events that happened, right? It's almost in the world of like trying to get access to security cameras or all the different whatever other CSI ways there are to find out what actually happened. I guess the interesting thing about this particular case is they also checked. He had other smart devices in his house, and he had a water meter, and it showed, it showed that 140 gallons of water were used between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on the night that they found the body in this gentleman's hot tub. Yeah.
That's a
little incriminating. I don't know how many gallons go in a hot tub. We might have to
probably
look that
about
up.
140.
Yeah. So maybe it was empty and he filled it up. At least if I was the defense lawyer, that's what I would say. Or he used it to get rid of some evidence. But so that that's an additional piece of information. It sounds like they didn't have to necessarily go to anybody to get that information. They know this already, right? It's actually even being reported on. So I wonder.
Maybe I wonder how they did get that.
Yeah. Maybe it was just one of those things where like their existing warrants, covered that. I mean, because it's legal gray area, right? So it may be the case that like they get, it's on the computer, we could see it, therefore we're okay. We already saw it, as opposed to when they have to involve the third party of Amazon in order to get to those soundbite files that are stored in the cloud. That's a different thing. So it seems like this is an ongoing case. We don't really know where this is going to land, but it's on the bleeding edge of that same privacy versus justice versus technology, or with technology in the middle.
Nope.
Case.
I wonder imagine if he's wearing a Fitbit or his phone with the steps.
Well, they already can do a fair amount of like, they can check cell towers to see if your phone pinged cell towers and kind of triangulate in where you were or weren't. And this is pretty accepted. And I think there probably was a time where we would have found that to be invasion of privacy. And we're kind of in a slippery slope here. I guess, I sort of have the fundamental, like, you kids get off my damn lawn, kind of like everybody stay off my property and whatever I do, especially behind closed doors. But, whatever I do on my property should be my business and no one should see it. And that's kind of sort of how I think about it. But this guy's also a murder suspect. They had a warrant to search his place. It doesn't seem so off that warrant could apply to those records. But it is a little bit different. Here's why it's a little different. Because it's almost like wiretapping, which sort of needs its own warrant.
It's like retroactive wiretapping.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's why this is a gray area. We're gonna have to just pay attention and see where it goes, because this is brand new stuff, and some people in robes are gonna have to sit around and talk about it after we have. We'll send them a summary. Let us know what you think. Let us hear from you, and we'll put your opinions into the summary. Tweet us at Good Talk Network, or each of us individually. If you've been listening to us for the past several weeks, you know that we've gotten this podcast onto iTunes and that we could really use your help. If this is your first time listening to Diginauts, congratulations, welcome! You probably found it because somebody before you left a rating on iTunes. What do you say? Pay it forward, pay it backward, pay it whichever direction it takes for us to be able to reach more people. Go to iTunes, in the store, click on ratings and reviews, give it a star rating, and then just leave a couple of words. It does a lot to help the algorithms, help people find us. We greatly appreciate it. Go now. Do it now. What? Did you think there was going to be more podcast? Nope. Not till you go to the store. Why aren't you on the store yet? Okay, here's more podcast, but go to the store. Okay, it's time for segment 4. Let's dig some more. This is where we provide you the latest happenings in stuff that we've talked about before. Technology is constantly evolving and constantly changing, and we're talking about things just like the last case where we don't necessarily know what the conclusion is going to be when we're talking about it. So we always want to kind of look back and see where things are. I have to start today with an apology. Eric, believe it or not, in our last show, we were talking about the guy who was protesting walking through the body scanners. And I brought up a story about the guy who had been caught masturbating to the imagery. And
Was it you?
It was. Well, there's my admission. I have to confess. No, it turns out that's fake news.
Oh,
I got tricked. Shit. I mean, and I'm the guy who, like, I installed the bullshit extension on my Facebook after we were talking about it. So I now, for everybody listening, by the way, check this out. Go into like Chrome extensions and get an extension called bullshit. It puts a neat little banner over the top of, any Facebook ad, or even sometimes outside of the Facebook environment, any stuff that comes off of their list of not quite newsworthy sources. It gives you a little like, this is a clickbaity site, this is not necessarily a trustworthy source, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've made it kind of a goal to not click on anything that they register, even if it's like, kind of in the world of like Occupy Democrats or something like that. There's a little thing there saying, yeah, this is probably partisan or whatever. And I gotta say, my like emotional heat level has gone down because that's who they're pandering to. But anyway, right as I was mixing the show, I was like, yeah, where was that? Because I was typing out the show notes, and I quick search, and boom, Snopes. It didn't happen. It's a story that somebody got out there, and I was completely suckered. I swear to you that I read
bait.
that story. Yeah, well, puns, the highest form of humor. Clickbait, masturbate. Anyway, I definitely encountered it on the internet, written up as a news article. I know that this is the case, and that's why it entered into my memory as if it was a legit thing, and I said it on the podcast as if it was a thing that happened. We usually try to have sources, and I didn't, and there you go. So I had it in the show notes from the moment it was published, but I felt obligated in our Dig Some More to bring up the fact that I did, in fact, propagate the problem. The very problem last time. Are you laughing because I said propagate? I knew it. You have a 12-year-old mind, sir. All right, so coming up after that, I also have said that in this Dig Some More segment, I was just going to kind of do a roundup of headlines in the environmental sphere, because we could fill this segment every time, or we could fill an entire podcast with all of the headlines that are frightening and disturbing. I've decided that I should give it a title. I've titled it Darren's Official Omnibus Offering of Mother Earth Dispatches, which coincidentally spells doomed. So take that for what it's worth. We actually start with a pretty decent, cool headline. It says that solar could beat coal to become the cheapest power source on Earth. This was reported in Bloomberg. They're talking about a roughly 10-year timeline. And this just seems obvious and inevitable, right? Like, I mean, the only reason that we use coal, as big a pollutant as it is because it's a rock that you dig out of the ground, right? Like, it doesn't get any cheaper. But the fact of the matter is that solar technology is getting to a point where solar is starting to win contracts on a purely financial basis.
And plus, I think I've read also that solar's approaching, if not on par with, if not lower than the price of wind.
Yeah. So solar has the momentum to become the way, which only makes sense given that the sun spits out, enough energy to fuel every electrical device on Earth every 10 minutes or whatever it is, like for a year.
Like I think Vegas is becoming reliant on solar.
Yeah.
And like Elon Musk with Tesla,
the battery farm.
They just powered some country.
Yeah, an island nation.
Yeah.
Was it?
I forgot what.
I forgot where too. Yeah, but they, as an experiment, they were like, let's see if we can get it to run. I think it was a full day for the full little island. Yeah. So I mean, strides are being made clearly, and we were just talking Moore's law, right? So solar is all technology, and it's getting more efficient and faster and whatnot, and that should be exponential. Whereas coal hasn't changed for millennia. So it's to be expected. It's kind of inevitable. But there's our happy story. And the rest of the roundup, not so happy. Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources says global warming is debatable, and then therefore scrubs climate info from its site, according to the Twin Cities Pioneer Press. The government, this is, of course, Scott Walker. We can't talk about global warming. It's debatable, and therefore let's eliminate all debate, is the position they've taken. So that's delightful. Global warming is causing birds to migrate too soon. Early flight may mean that some avians miss out on food. This is from the Daily Mail out of the UK. And I mean, that's kind of something that we've known is going to happen, right? It's messing with the seasons. So you get insects showing up early, you get longer seasons of the wrong
Anorexic polar bears.
Well, all sorts of stuff, right? So I mean, anorexic polar bears is pretty direct, right? That's just habitat loss. This is full on, like, you still got your habitat and maybe the temperature shifted but not enough to do anything, but it's affecting when different organisms show up in their annual cycle, and that can impact entire food webs in a nasty, nasty way. And then there's a study out of Duke where they said that in order to meet the global emissions targets, based on their calculations, for what we've set forth in the Paris Agreement, we need a 10-fold jump in green technology. That, like, yeah, we've all, as a world, we've come together and set forward some decent goals for ourselves, which Donald Trump has said that he may very well pull out of. But even if we were to meet those modest, decent goals, we need a full 10 times improvement in the technology that we're using to get there. And you know, if we don't have no small challenge, right? I mean, completely doable if everyone just had the political will, right? But that political will is going to show up when Florida is half its size. Is my prediction. When Miami is underwater, and you know, that's when suddenly we'll go ahead and admit that, oh, I guess perhaps there's a problem.
Well, maybe when Mar-a-Lago is sub-oceanic.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of places, right? Like when the Atlantic Ocean starts creeping up on the steps of Congress, because that's swampland, right? Out there. So, like, you know, all of Washington D.C. is is in that world of potentially underwater someday. You know, not soon enough that they're gonna take action. But I assume that the horde of people with pitchforks and torches and probably swim fins will show up at Congress's door at some point in our lifetime. But anyway, that's the doomed roundup. We'll do a quick look around the globe for those. Most episodes, whenever there seems to be a summary to bring you, and it really is seeming like every single week it's like, oh, we're fucked. Oh, we're fucked. Maybe bright side. Oh, no, we're fucked. So keep working on it, scientists. Work faster.
10 times.
Do you need an energy drink? All right, so the other area that we wanted to go into was automated drones and driverless cars and all that good self-driving technology that we have out there.
Yeah, and Amazon obviously has a vested interest in, disparate and new and innovative ways of delivering things. They recently did a small experiment where they actually delivered a package, I think, like 700 feet away from one of their warehouses, and it was successful. But they're thinking longer term. You think about the trucks.
Further than 700 feet.
Exactly. More than a stone's throw. They spend a lot of money on logistics. They spend a lot of money with UPS, USPS, FedEx, probably every shipping company in the world, right? But it's one of their biggest costs also.
Right.
So they're always about, how can we do things better? Why wait on someone else when we can innovate? So obviously drones, they've already started experimenting with it. But in the interim, it's like, how do you fill that gap? How do you fill that need? So as an interim step, they're starting to basically create almost like an Uber for trucking. So, have an app and a system where which they can locate trucks and people that have, less than truckload capacity, meaning their trucks aren't full. How can they fill those trucks? Well, they can fill those trucks with Amazon goods and get paid for it as a result.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, are we talking moving industry, or are we talking just shipping in general? Like the same truck that is already bringing groceries to a Ralph's but has some extra cargo space will be leveraged to bring Aunt Sally's Christmas present?
So I don't think it would be like Vons because, you think about it, they're a little competitive, right?
Okay.
If I were Vons, I would say absolutely not Amazon.
We have a vested interest in brick and mortar stores.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
We don't want your AI store to put us out of business, but
Right.
That's inevitable. But there are so many trucks out there that have space that needs to be monetized, right? And if you think about it, more, truck drivers, they're going to go the way of the dodo. Like, that is an endangered job. It's without a question proven already. Like, Uber bought Otto, an autonomous tractor trailer company, and they've already, similar to what Amazon did with the 700, foot delivery with the drone. I don't know how many miles it was, but they basically partnered with, I think, Budweiser, and had a autonomous Otto truck deliver beer to the factory.
Okay.
So they've already proven it. Uber owns it, which was a smart purchase. And given that, fewer and fewer people are even considering and becoming truck drivers, there's a shortage of truck drivers. The average age is like 64, so they're old. They're going by the way of the dodo. They're going to become extinct due to technology anyways. So obviously Amazon is thinking about how can we alleviate ourselves of this problem. Like, there's not enough capacity. Whoever they use can't even meet their capacity. They've even partnered with the USPS via loophole to deliver on Sundays. That's not enough. So, right?
So what's interesting is that it's not. So when this article is saying that, the future isn't drones, it's self-driving trucks. The delivery side with drones, that's one thing, but getting something from a factory to a town, first of all, like, you could still have a person whose job it is to ride on the back of the truck and run out and toss something to the porch or whatever the case may be. I'm sure it'll be replaced by a robot, but I'm saying in the interim, you can imagine, on busy routes that they may have that sort of like person who runs up to the step kind of thing, because that's still a logistical issue for UPS, right?
Yep.
Maybe it'll be drones but it's not. The drone doesn't have to bring it from the factory. The drone can bring it from the truck, the self-driving truck. So maybe that's kind of the point of view of no, it's not about helicopters, carrying things from the Seattle warehouse to the Oregon.
That's interesting.
Front.
So it's not the last mile; it's like the last couple feet.
I wonder.
That's interesting. I mean, and you brought up earlier on the screen Amazon's recent patent about kind of the blimps that act as like warehouses in the sky.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about in 7.5. So
nice.
Let's not spoil that one. But speaking of the driving, there was actually a report on ScienceAlert.com. They caught dashboard video.
I saw that
a car crash that a Tesla anticipated, and it's really interesting.
It is interesting, but I've come across counter articles where it didn't necessarily predict like that article implies. It noticed it and acted accordingly.
That's fair. I mean, whatever. We know that the people who write articles and the people who write the headlines are different people, right? And the internet has ruined journalism. So I am more than happy to concede the word predict. What's interesting, if you watch this actual video here, right? We're looking up the dashboard at the two cars driving ahead. You hear beep 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 from the Tesla.
Yep.
And it starts its braking system. And as a human, even just watching the video, right? And I'm in the POV of the driver. It goes beep, beep, beep. And I'm like, what's going on? And, I have enough time to full on be like, what's that beeping mean? Am I out of gas? And then the accident happens up ahead. And what it's registering, what it's alerting the driver of, and what it's full on braking from is that it had detected that those vehicles were no longer a safe distance from each other. So, I mean, I still see this as kind of a breakthrough, because if you read about the technology, it sounds like what Tesla has done here is they're using a radar system, and the kind of initial problem to begin with was, because this is a weird situation. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not viewing the video, but the dashboard camera footage shows a vehicle up ahead, and it crashes into a vehicle up ahead of it. So from the point of view of me in the driver spot, I'm not seeing that SUV that the car bumped into until it starts spinning end over end because of the collision. But I guess what they did technology-wise is they are, instead of just using a radar, which would bounce off the larger vehicle in the back, they're bouncing the radar off the road so that they kind of get angles on things. And they can have kind of a full picture of what's going on, even if there are vehicles in the way. So that allows them then to detect, right? So I raised this story not as like a significant story in and of itself, but just a symbol of the fact that there is an ongoing improvement in the technology, to the point that you talk about there not being any truck drivers. There's clearly not going to be any drivers.
Right.
I believe our great-grandchildren and probably our grandchildren will look back at us as monsters forever having, engage. It will be like, wait, people used to ride horses as their main mode of transportation? Well, huh? How does that even make sense? They're dirty, and the same thing with cars. Right. I think that's where we're inevitably headed. And the interesting thing, the other story I wanted to bring up is Slate.com was running a story about the fact that self-driving cars are going to exacerbate organ donor shortages.
Right.
Which is a really interesting,
So we'll have to grow the organs then.
Well, that's the only solution, right? We're going to have to come up with a better technology in that world. But it's an interestingly morbid problem to have, right? Because I guess it's something like 1 in, I'm forgetting the actual number, but a significant percentage of the organs that we get in order to be able to do transplants come from car accidents. I want to say it was like 1 in 5. I don't quote me on that. I'll put the actual article in the show notes. And it was 5%, whatever. But the point is that it was like a decent number, to the point that if you looked at the number of transplants that happen, we're in a world where thousands or tens of thousands of people won't get organs because car accidents aren't happening on the highway. Wow. Because we're assuming that inevitably self-driving cars will reduce some, maybe we don't reach the point of no highway accidents, but we can expect it to be greatly reduced, and that is actually going to have an impact on the medical.
But is the net result of all this like more human lives saved?
Probably.
Right.
But tell that to a doctor, right? Tell that to somebody who's waiting for a kidney transplant, right, who's already on a thousands-long wait list in order to get a kidney. And then there's additional complications of class and race and all that good stuff that goes into it, blah, blah, blah. But if you're those guys, you're kind of rooting for, a drunk driver to wrap himself around a tree, because then you get to live.
Could they use that if he's drunk?
Eventually. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I would assume so. I think you could run dialysis. I'm going to stop talking because before I get sued. But yeah. So that was an interesting kind of thing that people are reflecting on. That that's going to impact us. So much as we need more green technology, we also need more organ growing technology, stem cell research, etc., etc., etc. Again, get to work, scientists.
Don't want to miss another episode of the Diginauts? Easy to fix. Go to iTunes, search for the Diginauts, easily add that to your iTunes podcast library, listen to the whole catalog if you want, then you'll be notified of future episodes, or add it to any other podcasting app. Overcast, Acast, whatever cast, right? All we want is you, as a listener, to not miss another episode. Furthermore, help other people find us, right? You can easily do that. Go back to iTunes, give a rating, 1 through 5 stars, and give a comment. That will really help shape the episodes going forward.
Right, so segment 5, warehouses in the sky. We started to talk about it a little bit in the last segment, and it's our segment 5, What's Your Take? There's a alternate weekly in Seattle where I'm at some point in my life from, called The Stranger, and their headline was, Seattle Corporation wants to put warehouse in the sky, which is delightful because it's like, I wonder what Seattle Corporation that is.
Microsoft?
Well, it's Boeing. I guess there's other contenders, but yeah, Amazon filed for patents for what amounts to a giant warehouse hanging from a giant blimp. So, we're talking about all the drone technology, the self-driving cars, et cetera, clearly, they're just staking their territory on every method of getting anything to anybody, right?
Could rain presents.
Yeah, well, so I guess one of the big cool advantages of this is, imagine our little delivery drones, right, that take your stuff to your porches. We were just talking about how it's the last 100 feet that matters. So what they're envisioning is this thing hangs out up in the sky, and the order comes through, and a robot that's already up there, I guess it's high altitude. They're thinking like 45,000 feet.
Wow.
In the patent. So, I know that with air traffic, you have to have like planes going in this direction are at a certain altitude, and planes going in that direction are a certain altitude, and whatever. So everything would be 100% automated, obviously. There's no people, so there's no security, and there's no janitorial, and et cetera, et cetera. There's just robots and, drones that the order goes up. Whichever is the closest airship has the merchandise, and the drone goes over, grabs the merchandise, drops itself out the window, reaches terminal velocity.
Oh, I was gonna say, because I didn't think drones could go that high.
Well, they can't. Or
how would it get back?
They're thinking some kind of like shuttle system. So who knows what's going to happen with the drones, right? Obviously,
it's like mini space shuttles.
Well, we were just talking about things that didn't exist, right? And the quad drones that you see everywhere in hobby shops right now, they're pretty brand new. And Amazon is playing with its drones and trying to obviously, get them to where they can lift something. Part of the advantage of this skyship is it doesn't have to do anything. It just drops. So whatever the delivery system is, right, it drops, and the drone powers up once it's close to the ground, and then takes it the last part of the way, just like we were talking about with the trucks. Again, obviously they got some stuff to work out, right? What happens when a drone misfires and you have a 20-pound package reaching terminal velocity over a city?
Southwest Airlines Flight 454 is
absolutely
50 feet away.
Well, again, that's the kind of thing that they do work out in air traffic control. That like,
yeah, but it's so archaic even to this day.
Oh, absolutely. Right. The fact that there are humans who are actively like looking at blips to
exactly, and even not looking at blips, like using eyesight at times.
Right.
So it's like these drones aren't as big as an airplane. So it's like, can the radar even detect these drones?
I feel like they declared their patent in order to be able to be like, we're the ones who get to own this idea. And those things will have to be worked out, right? They're still talking to the FAA about, can we send a drone with a package, right? Let alone can we hover a blimp above a city in order to deliver stuff. So we placed this as a what's your take because, I look at that as like, I am not sure whether I like that or not. I have been an Amazon backer since early days, partly because I lived in Seattle in the nascent Amazon times. I mean, and we're talking when books were what you could buy, right? But what it meant was that books got to you fast if you were in Seattle proper, right? You were talking 1 or 2 day delivery. so I've always kind of loved what they do, and all their advancements continue. I have Prime membership, and I literally, like we buy diaper wipes and toilet paper and all those kinds of things where it's like, you could put it on the grocery list and go to the store, but why? And I justify the carbon footprint by virtue of the fact that, like, well, me driving to the store versus the UPS truck going 100 feet off of its course that it was going to drive anyway, it comes out in the wash a little bit. So I've always been kind of an Amazon fan, but there is something big brothery about, like, hovering above you, waiting to take your money, and it's kind of like every once in a while how you hear when somebody gets an idea to advertise on the moon, right? It's like, that's not yours. You don't get to put, the McDonald's logo on it.
I mean, I would argue, why not?
Well, sure. And again, this
or if
is
you
one
don't
of those
physically put it on it, like, imagine projecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
you project.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, right? Who's going to stop you?
Like, well, it's like projection mapping, where you like make it look like it's part of it. I don't know.
Right. Wait, who cares, right? I don't want to look at the moon, which has been a pristine symbol of poetry and human imagination for millennia, and say I'm loving it, right? Like, that's just not how I operate. And I think the same goes for the sky, right? Like, I'm used to looking up at the sky, seeing a beautiful blue thing with occasional birds in it, clouds, and some sunlight. And we're already in a world where... So I had this happen, by the way. I was getting in my car outside my place the other day, and a drone, like a big drone, came above our property and sat there. And I know it's a robot, right? But I don't know who's flying it. I don't know why they're flying it. I don't know if it has a camera on it. And we kind of had this, like, staring match, right? Like, I sat there with my hands on my hips looking up at that thing, almost like, daring the controller to a fight. But there was something very creepy about, someone with the high ground hovering over your head. And it then, like, it just, like, sped off and did the same thing, further along. So I don't know if it's like a Google Map thing or if it was just some kid in the park across the street playing with a toy. It was big for it wasn't one of those little light, what do you call them? The
DJIs?
quadcopters that are kind of just so light that they can be cheap. It was a bigger drone. But I don't know what it was for, And there's part of me that kind of wants there to be laws about that. Like, I should be able to shoot it down if I feel like it, if it's above my property. So or I love the stories of, like, people training hawks to take them out or whatever. And I'm sure there's, like, again, legal ground to be explored there. Are you destroying somebody else's property when they're on your property? Blah, blah, blah. Like, we're going to have to figure that out. And I'm sure, different states will have different laws and whatever.
Yep.
But the point of the story is, in that same vein of kind of, can a private interest take advantage of a public resource, or a public resource is maybe not the right word. It's the same argument as, like, view rights, right? Like, can somebody build a house closer to the ocean than me that's taller than my house? Like, those local squabbles, right? Do I, as
but
a
airlines,
citizen, look up at the
airlines
sky?
already fly above your house, irrespective
Absolutely.
of your control or...
Okay, but there's also plenty of not in my backyard arguments that's come up over flight paths, right?
Yeah,
like,
because
this
of the
is a
noise.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Well, drones make noise.
Yep.
And I don't know, but I bet that this blimp that has, thousands of little worker bees around it, I bet you're gonna hear something. I don't know. I think this is definitely an area where something's going to go down. Like, either they'll slowly ease us into it, just like they do with everything, or it'll be a point of contention. And I mean, in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing Amazon airships hovering over poorer neighborhoods.
Right.
You know?
I mean, each delivery will come with noise-canceling headphones.
Well, if only. I guess by then we'll be looped into the robot singularity, and we won't care. It'll just block it out from our brainwave signals. I don't know. But we do want to know what you think about this and everything we talked about today. You know, do you welcome Amazon overlords in the sky? Especially when it comes with the convenience of, like, you hop on your phone, you go, I need an ice cream cone, please, and it shows up in your hand before it's had a chance to melt, because it's reached terminal velocity, refrozen, and then been delivered the last couple hundred feet by a handy drone that hovers above you and drops it at you. So we want to know what you think about that. What do you think about the Amazon Echo data being requested by law enforcement? What you think about humans transforming themselves? You can find us at our website, goodtalknetwork.com. You can tweet either one of us directly. Eric is
At eFader.
And I am at Digital Darren, which is spelled DERON. You can call us 323-686-8255. If you leave a voicemail, we would be delighted to share your opinion on a future show in our Dig Some More segment. We want to hear from you, and we want to engage with you in the questions of humanity's future. Does that make it sound like too big of a statement if I say humanity's future?
No.
I think that's what we're talking about. So let us know what you think. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everybody. Good talk.